One of the many issues plaguing this 1988 S10 Blazer is its loose steering feel, and you don't have to be an automotive super sleuth to uncover a big reason why. I think it's just the bolts at the base of the column coming loose. The shifter has also always been a little bit weird, and I think it might be due to the loose column. You can see when I wiggle this whole thing, it moves. And while it's apart, hopefully we can fix what they call a phantom wipe. No, it's not something a poltergeist helps you with in the bathroom. In fact, it's randomly activating the wiper blades, and it's really annoying. Sometimes right when you put the key in, they'll do one swipe, sometimes just going down the road. But apparently, it's a fault of the turn signal switches and something they fixed in later parts. We have one of those, as well as what I hope are the correct parts to get the horn button to work. The main goal here is the loose column, but the other stuff would be really nice to take care of too. Here's a before test. There's clearly a lot of movement, all sorts of directions here. First things first, let's try to get the steering wheel apart. That horn button just pops off like that. We do have a broken turn signal cam in there. We also seem to be missing the steering shaft clip. To remove the steering wheel, all we gotta do is take off that center nut. Quite loose, fantastic. By the way, as you can see, this is a Fiero steering wheel. Got it off of Craigslist years and years ago. The seller insisted it was a Firebird wheel despite the Fiero logo on it, but whatever. I actually think it's kind of hilarious. And these are pretty flat, which is actually nice as far as arm angle. We can thread bolts into these two holes here and use a puller to slide this off. You can also see the steering lock doesn't work. Maybe it's just because of how loose everything is. Remove the puller and we can remove the wheel. I'm going to go ahead and just pull off the turn signal switch. This one is not a cruise control model. There's no wire in here at all. And we can also go ahead and remove the hazard switch. This is just a Phillips screw. The lock plate is so loose. Whoa. Yeah, normally you compress this, pop the clip off, then you could remove it. But in this case, it made itself easier to disassemble. We'll still pop the plastic cover off anyway. That's what actually locks the wheel. And here's the broken turn signal cam. We can also remove the lock plate spring that's supposed to be putting some force on there. And down below it, there's this conical piece. This applies force to the bearings. I'll go hook up the battery and we'll test the horn button. It should be able to short between this contact and ground. We'll try to refrain from breaking that. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and take out this Phillips screw. This is the actual link that holds the turn signal switch with the wiper switch assembly. Next we have the 3 screws that are holding the turn signal switch assembly. Just gonna hold onto those wires and pull this as far as it wants to go, which is right about there. Now and inside here we've got the key minder switch. This is what closes when the key is inserted and will buzz at you if the door is open. Below it there's this little flat spring dude. We've got a torque screw, this black one right here, that should release the lock cylinder. From here we need to remove the housing. We've got these 3 larger torque screws. This particular column has a 2-piece housing. This piece is going to stay put. The rest of it should come forward just like that. We do now have access to the wiper switch in there. I'm going to worry about that in a little bit. The rear of the housing can also come off, and the first of a few different pieces here. We can also see both of the tilt pins, and they're not loose. That's not where any of this slop is coming from. Some people will stop here because you can kind of get to 2 of the screws, but we're gonna keep going. There's this little retaining screw down here, holding the spring in place. And use a Phillips screwdriver, push in, rotate. There's the cup, spring, and all this grease. Its guide is on the bottom there. By the way, this wire was for the extra functions on the cruise control stock. I'm not gonna bother with any of that. Next, we'll remove these pivot pins. In the past, we've done these using a screw, but this time we're going fancy. I think I paid about $9 for this. We'll thread in the socket cap screw as far as it'll go. And once that feels like it's pretty much bottomed out, we're gonna use the Allen key to hold it still. And we'll use a 1/2-inch wrench to tighten that down, which should pull out our pin. We'll do the same thing for the driver's side pin. Now we can rotate the tab for the ignition switch because this link is still in here. At least the tilt lever there. We can hopefully pull this section forward. The inner race of the bearing seems a little bit stuck here. Now, there we go. Here's the ignition switch link. This is just connecting to the rod that travels along the column. The last thing is this link. I think that's the high beam switch. It's got a angled end that doesn't easily come out of there. So we're just gonna leave it be. We're finally deep enough in the column to see the 4 screws that hold the upper column to the lower column. That one is barely even threaded in there anymore. And the passenger side one is not a lot better. These are an E8. Oh yep, nope, that one is completely out. That screw is not threaded in at all. All right, carefully get the guy out of there with the magnet. There's one of the 4 culprits to this whole problem. We'll remove these one at a time, clean all the grease off, put them back in with a substantial amount of blue Loctite on them. Once they're all in there and Loctited, we will torque them all down to 10 foot-pounds, which is about what a 1/4 inch fine bolt should typically be. We'll go around one more time just to make sure. It's a little hard to see with it disassembled, but pretty rock solid. With our main objective complete and the upper column pretty thoroughly disassembled, it's about time we crack open the dashboard to gain access to the wiring at the lower section. After the 2 footwell covers are out of the way, we can undo the lower trim panel. At least one of these is kind of holding it. And removing the screw behind the parking brake release will let it pull outward. That's probably enough. Here's our cruise control wire. Now we can see the other end of it in there. It goes through this plastic channel along the bottom of the column and out to this connector. So we're just gonna pull that connector out and remove that wire completely. And we can pull out that channel because it's no longer really doing anything. Time to figure out this link. That's gonna be close enough for now. One last thing before we put this together, I'm gonna clean off as much of the old grease as I can. May as well give it some good stuff. This is where the process gets a bit tricky. Need this link to hook in back here. Then the upper housing can be hooked back onto the tilt pawls, ensuring that the high beam link isn't jammed up, and we'll keep checking to make sure things are working as they should. Start. Run accessory off. Try to clean some of the old grease off that bearing. Slather even more over here. Trying to pack that bearing a little bit. And let's get the pins back in. Pop that pin into place. And to install it, we're just gonna use this extension. That's most of the way in. Let's get the passenger side one. That's all the way in. And we'll finish driving in the driver's side one. Now need to figure out the wiper switch situation. I had bought a replacement switch, but as soon as I actually have the 2 next to one another. First thing to note is that this is not the right part. To get a better look, let's push out this pin, pull it the rest of the way out, and the switch can come out. It turns out that I ended up with a switch for a non-tilt column, which is clearly quite different and not at all compatible. I was afraid this might happen and ordered 2. The other one isn't here today though, it's supposed to be here tomorrow, so hopefully the other one that shows up actually fits this thing. What annoying things are left that we can try to take care of? We've got the spring for the tilt. This isn't annoying, it's just gross. We'll drop that in place, put our cap in place. Push in pretty good on that. Turn, kind of clicks into place. We'll also clean up the inner bearing race, put even more grease on it. That will get dropped on. Make sure it's fully seated. Now I'm gonna try to get this dang spring back on. We've got a round hook kind of end of the spring. That needs to go around the rear of that lock pin. Now we just have to get the flat end of the spring into the slot right there. We need to reinstall the little hold down screw for it. This is about as far back together as we can go for now, but we can try to locate the connector for the wiper switch and pull that out. See if I can get it out of there without breaking it. Finally got that disconnected. Now we just have to try to feed this up through the column. We'll see how well that goes. It shares a channel with the turn signal switch. That means we're gonna have to separate the column from that a little bit so we can fit a connector through. To give us a little bit more room, we're gonna loosen the 2 nuts that hold the steering column bracket on. That gives us a pretty good amount of room. Get it out of the guide. And we feed this connector all the way through. Haha. There we have it, finally. There's our entire wiper switch assembly. So all we need is a clock wipe to pass some time as we wait for the mail. I just took delivery of this. It does appear that this is the correct part. Looking at the underside of the switch, we do see a difference, and that's good because that means this is the updated model. So we can now finish putting the column back together. The first thing we need to do is feed the wire through, get that aligned, grease up the pivot pin, and reinstall it. Just have to get the wire through the column now. Going to tape this, that'll keep it perpendicular. I have a tool for this exact purpose. It's a coat hanger, which will hook onto the wire and push on the connector. Aha! Through the upper half of the column. Once it's behind the bracket, we'll try to get the wires into the guide. We've got all the wires back in the channel, and now we can plug this in. That should be everything down there. And with our new wiper switch, I think we're about ready to finish reassembling the column. We've made sure that this link is installed correctly. That's for the high beams. This goes into the side housing, and I'll be careful not to knock that whole thing loose while the main shroud here goes on. Now we can install the 3 bolts that hold in this upper housing, and we need to get the lock cylinder back in there, grease up the end of that, slot it in something like that. There we go. And we need our locking screw. That seems to be working there, so we'll keep on moving. We can reinstall the 2 parts of the keyminder switch. First, we've got our little spring, and then we can install the keyminder switch. And next, we have the turn signal switch. Gonna pull the wires through a little bit from the back, make it easier to get this in there. We can also install the new turn signal wiper stalk. This has a little tab on it, which needs to line up with the tab in the switch. The outer housing has tabs that line up as well. We'll go ahead and reinstall this link bar. The end of this sits in the track. We can also reinstall the hazard switch at this point. And with the ignition in run, let's try left turn, right turn. The high beam switch is working because the high beams are coming on, but I'm not seeing a high beam indicator. Let's try the windshield wipers. High. Okay. Now that everything seems to be working, we can reinstall this guy, and the spring sits on top of that, followed by the turn signal cam. We have our new one replacing the crusty old one, and on top of that sits the lock plate. This time we're actually going to have to press it down. I'm going to kind of squidge this ring down with pliers, and we'll slide that over the input shaft. Use our lock plate tool this time. Thread that all the way onto the steering shaft, then use the wing nut to compress the spring. Then we can get the clip all the way down to its home, and we can remove the lock plate compressor. And what do you know, the steering lock is actually going to work now. I guess the steering column has just been that loose the entire time I've owned it. A little bit alarming. Let's get the cover back on and the steering wheel reinstalled. The steering wheel nut will get torqued to 30. And even though I think some models didn't come with a lock clip, I would feel better putting an off-the-shelf 3/8 of an inch one on there. We'll follow that up with a common horn contact parts kit. Drop in the spring, and on top of that goes the pin and bushing. Or at least it's supposed to. The base of these pins is too big. It doesn't actually fit in there. Now we can take our freshly shaven contact pin here, push down into the turn signal cam, and rotate the collar and lock it in place. Theoretically, we're ready to reinstall our horn button. Reconnect the battery, and nothing. Yeah, that works. The steering wheel supposed to have a longer pin? Oh no, yeah, the Fiero uses a different contact. There's a used one on eBay for $45. That sucks. Right now the horn is ready to work. It wants to work, but it's not going to. Just gonna cover that up. Yep. Okay, good to go. We still need to mount the steering column, so let's get all those bolts in. Snug up the 2 support studs that hold the bracket to the dash. Torque them to 30 foot-pounds, and bring the M8 bracket bolts up to 15. Now we should probably reassemble the lower dashboard here. And that's pretty much the whole thing put back together. This calls for a celebratory before and after comparison, which is pretty stark. You can see the whole dashboard moving a little bit. And we do have that working steering lock. Even with it unlocked, that's pretty solid. One day we'll make that horn work. It's not hard to get to, at least. And in fact, it bothered me enough that I was back with the plan just 10 days later. I've been thinking about the horn button, and it's taken way too long for this to occur to me. If only I knew somebody with a Fiero that had the same steering wheel that I could take the switch out of to measure it and make a new one. And then I remembered, I have one of those. I'm not even kidding, it actually took me a while to even think about this. And I've used the horn button in this, I know it works. So theoretically, yep, that's the exact part I was looking for. I'm an idiot. Back in the Blazer, for a proof of concept, let's pop out this brush, pop in the Fiero one, and theoretically, I just need one that I didn't steal. So we're gonna try to make a copy of this. We're gonna start with this 1/2-inch aluminum dowel, mostly because it's the smallest one I have sitting around, and we'll use the trusty, terrible mini lathe to trim this to the length, diameter, and shape that we're looking for. I definitely should have taken the time to set up a support to limit deflection, and the finished part does have a bit of taper to it, but nothing that should matter at all in use. The plastic part is a little bit trickier. The Blazer's original steering wheel used a different contact setup, with a wire running from the horn button down through a long bushing in the turn signal cam. This appears to be a much more common part than the Fiero one, so I don't feel too bad cutting the wire and trimming down the plastic bushing. And there it is. That's the completed setup. We are back inside the Blazer. Let's see if we can make this work. Drop in the spring and see if this will install. It's kinda wobbly, but so was the actual Fiero one. Moment of truth. Finally, the Blazer has a horn button that actually works. It's been a little bit more complicated than I expected, but very happy with that. I did also bend out the 3 little hold down prongs on this pad because it was a little bit loose. Now it's on there much better. I just didn't do that before because I knew I'd have to take it off a couple times. I'm super happy with all of these fixes, from the obvious changes like a steering wheel that doesn't feel as though it's one pothole away from coming off in your hands, to the more subtle ones like wiper blades that sit quietly at the bottom of the windshield until called upon. Sure, the truck is still a bit of a mess from any angle, but at least this critical interface between it and the driver has finally been solidified. Let's get those out of there. I'm gonna get a magnet to do that. I lied, we're just gonna use pliers. Okay, magnet is fine. Link is back in place. Now I just have to keep it in place. Oh, it already fell off. Now I just have to keep it in place. Now we find the key again. Okay, where would a normal person put it? And then where did I put it? There it is, okay. Now is the part where I forgot to slide the clip over the tool, which is a necessary part of the procedure. And these are pretty flat, which is actually nice as far as arm angle here.